Being able to trade down within tiers at positions while still maintaining production is by far the easiest way to add draft capital or just more assets in general to your dynasty rosters, and that has been the point of this series throughout the entire offseason. The way this is going to work is I'm going to show you guys stats from two similar players, but one is valued at a premium in startup drafts or trades, and the other is valued as more of the generic version, and then we'll break it all down. So first up, we have a running back comparison, and our premium running back is currently 25 years old, and in 17 games played last year, averaged per game 8.8 rush attempts, 4.3 targets, 68 total yards, 0.2 total touchdowns, 11.3 fantasy points per game, and totaled 9 top 24 weeks, 3 of which were top 12. And our generic running back is turning 25 years old in a couple weeks, and in 17 games played last year, averaged per game 12 rush attempts, 3.7 targets, 66 total yards, 0.5 total touchdowns, 12.3 fantasy points per game, with 12 top 24 weeks, 4 of which were top 12. And to further feed the comparison, both running backs entered the NFL in the same year back in 2022. They both play for different teams in the same division in the AFC, and they both are viewed more as their team's RB2. All right, now if you haven't gotten it yet, our premium receiver is Jaylen Warren, currently valued as RB24 in August ADP, and the generic running back is Jerome Ford, currently valued as RB44 in ADP, about 5 rounds later in value. So why the discrepancy? Well, I think it's just that we've been more excited for longer about Jaylen Warren than we have been for Jerome Ford, which, to be fair, Ford would not even be considered as more than a handcuff asset in Dynasty if Nick Chubb had never gotten hurt. But Nick Chubb is currently hurt. He's on the PUP list to start the year, meaning he's out for at least the first 4 weeks of 2024, if not longer. So Jerome Ford is once again the clear starting running back for Cleveland for at least 25% of the season. And when Chubb does return, what kind of volume and role is he even going to have? It could honestly be a very similar split like how Najee and Warren have currently as Nick Chubb returns from major knee injury. So moving forward, Warren and Ford could be in pretty similar situations, but at least Ford has a starting role right now for a very predictable amount of time this season. Plus, both running backs have the same potential of being starters next year, as both Nick Chubb and Najee Harris are free agents at the end of the year. And listen, I get it. We can make jokes all day long about the player usage in an Arthur Smith offense because of his misuse of elite players in Atlanta, but at the very end of the day, Najee Harris is just a better running back than Jaylen Warren, or at least he is more suited for a high volume role in the NFL, and Warren is better utilized as a change of pace receiving back in certain situations throughout games. And that's not to say that Jerome Ford is anything special either. He is definitely not. 800 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns on 200 carries last year is not super amazing, but it's also not half bad considering that he was thrust into the starting job in week 2 and was still sharing work with Kareem Hunt. But Kareem Hunt is now gone. The only other running back currently on the Browns' active roster is Pierre Strong, and there's a high likelihood that Ford is a 20-touch back to start the season and could almost be like a beginning of the year league winner, especially with the receiving ability that he offers as well. So I think if you're a contender, if you have Jaylen Warren as your RB3 or RB4, try to see if you can move him and get Jerome Ford plus. According to our trade analyzer, the difference between the two right now is around a random third in rookie drafts, which is not amazing. I understand that. But when you're able to add a starting running back for a portion of the year who most likely outscores Warren over the entire season, and you're not losing age or any future upside either, an extra third round pick is just a free asset at that point. Or maybe you shoot for an extra end of bench stash. That could be a guy like Josh Palmer or Dontavian Wicks or Jermaine Burton or my guy Ray Davis. Maybe it's a super old but still semi-productive player like a Brandon Cooks, Gus Edwards, Zeke Elliott, or just find a fun handcuff running back because you know how much I love to roster those guys and just bet on another starter getting hurt later in the year. It's not a super crazy move to shake up your whole roster and throw your league into a tizzy when they see it, but not all trades have to be. This is a very mild yet practical move that could actually make a huge difference for your chances of winning a championship this year. Next up, we have a wide receiver comparison, and our premium receiver is also turning 24 years old in a couple weeks, and in 16 games played last year, averaged per game 6.8 targets, 4.8 receptions, 53 receiving yards, 0.3 touchdowns, 12.8 fantasy points per game, and totaled 7 top 24 weeks, 4 of which were top 12. And our generic receiver is 28 years old and in 13 games played last year, averaged per game 6.7 targets, 3.9 receptions, 55 yards, 0.4 touchdowns, 11.6 fantasy points per game, and totaled 7 top 24 weeks, only one of which was top 12. To further feed the comparison here, both receivers played for different teams in the same division in the AFC last season. One of them is no longer in that division, so that's a major hint for you. And they both are viewed as explosive possession / PPR kind of team wide receivers in the NFL. But if you haven't gotten it yet, our premium receiver is Zay Flowers, currently valued as wide receiver 22 in August ADP, and the generic receiver is Diontae Johnson, currently valued as wide receiver 35 in ADP, about 2.5 rounds later in value. So why the discrepancy here? Well, this one is pretty easy. It's age and its career trajectory. Zay Flowers is the really fun year 2 wide receiver coming off of a very solid rookie campaign, while Diontae Johnson is the older, kind of has-been player that the community has never truly loved, coming off of a bad couple of seasons, and now he's on a brand new offense in 2024. But what if I told you that over the next 3 years, I believe Diontae Johnson is going to outscore Zay Flowers every single season? Huh? I mean, you'd probably call me crazy, but that's what I believe. I am not a massive Zay Flowers fan. I think that he is just a tad bit overrated for fantasy just because he really doesn't have a ceiling. It is massively capped by the offense that he's playing in. And he's arguably not even the top option for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Mark Andrews is. So if Flowers isn't consistently getting elite volume as a PPR guy, he's not going to be able to be a fantasy wide receiver 1 because he's not a huge touchdown threat and he's not consistently seeing 10 plus targets a game. And I don't know what changes for the Ravens to change their offensive philosophy as long as Lamar is under center, Mark Andrews is still there, and now they have Derrick Henry to just run for 2,000 yards anyway. But you know who has seen 10 plus targets per game in a season before and has a history of getting elite target volume? Diontae Johnson. And I get it. It's been a couple of years since we've seen the best of Diontae, but I don't think that it's a coincidence that his 2 worst seasons of his career came in seasons with Kenny Pickett under center and Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator.
Coincidence? I think not!
But it wasn't all that long ago that we saw Diontae average 17 fantasy points per game, eclipse 1,100 yards on the year, score 8 touchdowns on a whopping 169 total targets. That was the last time that Diontae played on an offense that actually had a semi-competent quarterback in old Ben Roethlisberger and a semi-competent offensive system with Big Ben effectively calling plays and overriding the dumbness of Matt Canada. So fast forward now to 2024, Diontae's on a new team with the Carolina Panthers. He has a brand new quarterback who, yeah, had a rough rookie season, but is still significantly better than anything Diontae had over the past 2 years. And he has a brand new offensive system that has supported elite fantasy wide receivers over the past 2 years. And that really feels like the most important part here. See, Dave Canales has done absolute wonders for struggling offenses and quarterbacks 2 years in a row. He turned Geno Smith into an MVP candidate, and both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf were top 16 fantasy wide receivers that year. And then last year, he gives Baker Mayfield a career-high season across the board and gives Mike Evans the best fantasy season he's had since like 2016. I mean, all you have to do is look at the type of player that Diontae Johnson is, who's just constantly wide open all of the time. And then you compare that to the rest of the receiving core that the Panthers have in a very old Adam Thielen, a fifth-year college breakout in Xavier Legette, a couple other busts from the past few draft classes. Terrace Marshall actually just got cut, and it's just so blatantly obvious that Diontae is by far the best player on this team and should go back to his target hog days from Pittsburgh that made him a fantasy wide receiver 1. But you don't even need to take my word for it. Listen to what Dave Canales himself said about Diontae Johnson at training camp.
As we build our offense, we really try to feature someone. And for us right now, where's Diontae Johnson at? And we have our progressions and we're going to move him around in formation, but the rest of the guys have to come alive as the coverage is dictated.
Oh, and here's the Panthers' new offensive coordinator, Brad Idzik, talking about Diontae Johnson too.
I told Dave, we need an X to start with, where if they don't respect him, he's winning. They're wrong. For us, that big deal. We put you over there, and they don't have help on that corner.
Duh, yeah.
We showed that for years. You made people wrong when they don't help, right?
Right now, the difference between Flowers and Diontae in our trade analyzer is around the 111 from this year's rookie drafts in one quarterback leagues or the 2.04 in superflex leagues, which is not a nothing piece at all. That was a decent range of rookies that all have various amounts of upside. You just really had to choose your fighter between Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Jaylen Polk, Ricky Pearsall, whoever was in that range. That is not a nothing piece to acquire from this year's rookie class. Or maybe it's a veteran like Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Alvin Kamara, Ramondre Stevenson, or even Derrick Henry to help you compete in 2024. Maybe you roll the dice on a Christian Watson, see what Terry McLaurin does with Jaden Daniels and no Jahan Dotson, stash a guy like Trey Benson or TJ Hawkinson for next season, or just kick the can all the way down the road for a 2026 or 2027 first round pick. Again, this is not a league breaking type of move, but as a contender, I am actively trying to get a deal like this done for a player that I believe will outscore Zay Flowers this year to help me compete. And I get something extra on top to drop down in age, drop down in value that could also help me this year or help me in the future to quickly turn over my team to compete again later.